Team 5, and the members are Fernando, Natalie, Felix, and Iris, and me, Brenda. Enjoy!
Reasons or objectives for incorporating writing into the foreign language class. Writing is one of the skills that is commonly part of second language teaching and learning programs. There are different social and academic reasons why language teachers seek to integrate writing into their foreign language classes. For pedagogical reasons, to help students learn the language system, for assessment purposes, as a way to establish the student's progress or command of the language, with a creative purpose, to develop self-expression, as part of group management, as an activity to reassure students, for acquisition reasons, as a careful way of working with language that allows students to explore and reflect with greater awareness about language, as an educational objective, to contribute to intellectual development, improving self-esteem and security, in addition to supporting the development of oral language or grammar. Many second language learners need to be able to write for a variety of different purposes or objectives. They need to be able to write different kinds of academic texts, but they also need to be able to write for professional purposes in a working environment. Two different objectives for teaching learning of writing are writing to learn and writing to write. In any case, it is important to emphasize that writing, like reading, needs to be learned. That is, unlike other skills, it does not develop naturally, since the ability to produce a text implies knowledge, strategies, and sustained practice. In this sense, the selection of the appropriate teaching approach depends to a larger extent on the type of program, the objectives, and the language level of the students. Teaching writing not only involves providing guidance and support for learners as they address these different dimensions of writing, but also involves helping sustain learners' motivation to improve their mastery of writing skills and conventions. The understanding of the nature of the issues learners face in mastering writing, and the ability to choose appropriate writing tasks and activities that are essential to success in the teaching of second language writing. The goal of writing instructions is to provide opportunities for learners to develop awareness of the conventions in written English and the nature of writing texts, as well as the knowledge and skills needed to produce texts that are appropriate for their purposes.
Writing as a product. This focus has dominated writing teaching for many years. Its concepts are based on structural linguistics and the transformational grammar of Noam Chomsky. This traditional perspective visualizes text as a tangible product that can be analyzed from the linguistic and rhetorical resources used. The central premise of this approach is that texts are autonomous objects that can be analyzed and described independently of the context where it occurs, the writer who elaborates them, and the particular reader. Before the 80s, writing skills were perceived as a dependent of imitating models composition provided by the teacher. Errors are considered as elements that must be corrected by students and not as a part of the learning process, and it will be seen later in the writing models pages. In this approach, the teacher presents a text as a model for students to imitate or adapt, or they also use books that offer a variety of texts as example. The main role of the teacher is to instill notions about the correct use of language and the application of rules and forms of writing. Nowadays, this perspective vision toward writing is found in textbooks that aim to teach effective ways of writing and where different options for structures are shown. In this case, writing is considered an extension of grammar, and it's often used to develop a general understanding of language. The role of the teacher in this type of writing is basically focused on correcting and identifying the problems that students have in handling the second or foreign language. Another application of writing as a product are the international exams such as the Test of Standard Writing English, TSWE, and the Test of English as a Foreign Language, TOEFL. This exam is worldwide popular. In these evaluations, the applicant must develop a subject in a certain period of time. However, the sample of product that the students make in this test does not show or indicate the ability of the students to produce a piece of text with different purposes or audiences. In recent years, the product approach has evolved to take into account of other elements such as the role of the writer, the process, and the readership.
The writing process. Here, we're going to focus on the writing from the point of view of the writer's process. This is focused on the cognitive theories, and it is known for not being a straightforward process, since writers discover and create new ideas to write down. These are some characteristics that Flowers and Hayes talked about. The first, writers have goals and they plan extensively. In planning, it requires a problem to place in a context to make it operational, creating the solution, and finally you can translate it or trespass the ideas to paper. Third, every work must be revised, evaluated, and modified before it is finally produced. Fourth, planning, drafting, revision, and addition are recursive activities. They are interactive and potentially simultaneous. Fifth, plans and texts are constantly evaluated to keep a feedback. And last, the complete process is supervised by a monitor. The model that Brighter and Scarmadella proposed have had a great impact in the introduction of writing, like pre-writing, draft making, addition, and revision from other readers. It's important to mention that this is mostly used for school texts because they have a defined academic purpose and a use of formal language. This approach is mostly based on writing for writing. Stages of writing. The first stage is planning. Here, readers need to keep three things in mind: the generation of ideas, the finishing of topic, and text structure. Here are different strategies to support the first stage. 1. Brainstorming. 2. Free writing. And 3. Clustering. In this first stage, grammar, spelling, organization, or logic won't matter. When creating an outline, you can help yourself by defining the topics and subtopics, presenting ideas in a chronological order, and mentioning advantages and disadvantages. It is very important to make a topic sentence that guides the text since the beginning. To choose a strategy for your text, you need to know its extension and its difficulty level. The second stage is writing and revision. The first paper that you write is named draft, and it won't only take one, it will take as necessary as needed. Here, you make changes according to a reflection to vocabulary and the order of ideas. Revision takes into account if the objectives are written down and if the ideas are presented in a logical and clear way. It is important that the text includes a sentence that portrays the main idea and closes with a conclusion. Here, grammar, sentence structure, spelling, and punctuation must be checked. Feedback is really important since it will allow the writer to think of ways to improve the process. And the final stage, that is the final product. The final product may be quite different from the first draft, but the important is for it to be a better version. For the final product to be correct, it needs to accomplish the objectives and expectations of the readers. It is recommended to have a closing activity where the writer has a way to close the process, and it may be in a forum, a magazine, or any other site the monitor recommends.
The general approach emerged as a response to the previous ones and has influenced writing instruction in the more recent years. Since this approach is based upon communicative language teaching, it looks at the ways in which language is used for particular purposes in particular contexts. Those ways being the social context for writing, the participants and communities that exist in each context, and the purposes for which people write in different situations. Therefore, this approach adds a social dimension to writing and focuses on the importance of the reader in it, because the writer establishes a relationship with the reader, so they both build the context. In addition to this, the writer must employ certain features conventionally associated with a text genre, which means the text should reflect the norms of the context in which the text is used, the cultural and rhetorical conventions of the text, the audience it is intended for, the expectations of readers, since the members of a community have to recognize similarities among the texts, the purpose the writer seeks to achieve, and the grammar, vocabulary, content, and organization selected according to the text context and specific situation it is written for. An example of the conventions of a text organization pattern can be the writing of essays in a Western academic context, in which the following elements are recognizable and expected by readers: the thesis statements, topic sentences, paragraphs with supporting details, and an individual stance or point of view from the writer. However, the conventions of a text organization in English might differ from those used in a student's native language. Besides, learners sometimes transfer such features and conventions into their writing in English. For example, the writer's point of view could be at the very end of the text, or the student can neither be familiar nor comfortable at setting an individual stance because of his or her authoritarian culture. In foreign language teaching, knowing the text characteristics and elements is a valuable underlying information for those who want to write text under this approach. Therefore, this knowledge is a key feature to the genre-based approach, which its stages are modeling, joint construction, and independent construction. Some of its applications in the classroom could be the analysis of text models of a specific genre expected to be reproduced, for example, advertisements, letters, and cooking recipes. And in a university context, it could be the writing of academic texts such as essays and the analysis of specific articles, dissertations, and academic texts. Also, it could be teaching writing for academic and professional purposes and English for specific purposes.
And now let's talk about providing feedback on the writing process. When it comes to providing feedback, the teacher has a crucial role during this stage, as he judges the student's work and comments on it. This feedback helps the student to understand what they did right and what they did wrong, and lets them improve their work. And as mentioned earlier, on writing we have two objectives: writing for learning and writing for writing. On writing for learning, when it comes to feedback, the focus is to help the student's ability in the language. The feedback is given when the activity is focused on grammar or when analyzing short sentences. But when it comes to writing for writing, the shift is focused on what the writer is trying to say. This doesn't mean that grammar is completely forgotten. It is still noted when a student commits an error, but it's not the main focus. Now, the teacher may have 4 roles in providing feedback. The first one is audience. In this one, the teacher reads the text and sees if it's interesting, easy to understand, or if it tells something about the author. The second one is assistant. In this one, the teacher works alongside the student. This helps the teacher analyze the work of the student along the way and helps them by expanding their information and guide them according to the genre or topic they're writing about. The next one is evaluator. The teacher comments not on the text but on the student's performance. This is given once the work is done. And finally, we have examinator. In this one, the teacher analyzes the writing abilities of the student based on a criteria the teacher has set. This is often done by checking the student's previous work or on a portfolio.